So the Google Pixel 4a bursted onto the scene, really offering consumers a really great option of a phone with great software support for some time. But the iPhone XR kind of already perfected this formula a couple of years ago. Yes, it was more, but now you can get it at a discounted price point. The question I want answered here is the Google Pixel 4a the better option over the iPhone XR? So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Google Pixel 4a or iPhone XR. Now the price point is still cheaper for the 4a, right at around $349, and over here for the XR, you're looking at around 400 or so on the third-party market. Again, Apple still sells this phone for a little bit higher price point. But I mean, you still could kind of choose between these. So I think it's kind of interesting here. Now, we're going to begin by talking about the body of both of these phones. Now, beginning with the Google Pixel 4a, 143 grams, we've talked about it before, makes this thing feel like a featherweight. Polycarb back, a lot of people will say, well, it doesn't really matter how it feels because, you're going to put a case on it anyway. And that's true to some extent, but if you want a more premium feel, you have the glass body on the XR, many beautiful colors, and you also have aluminum edges for this phone. Now, of course, you get that classic silent switch, but one thing that the Google Pixel 4a has that the iPhone XR doesn't have is a headphone jack. So you do have that in the more universal USB-C 3.1. Now over here for the iPhone XR, you are looking at the Lightning port on board, which can definitely do some fast charging, although that's not included in the box, is included for the Pixel 4a. Now talking about their overall thinness, it's funny because these are pretty much a similar thickness. The Google Pixel 4a clocks in at around 8.2 millimeters, and over here for the iPhone XR, you're looking at around 8.3. So general thickness feels about the same, but I think overall that the iPhone XR just feels like a much larger phone than the Google Pixel 4a, which is a much more comfortable feel in the hand. So when it comes to the body, I would give the Pixel 4a the more comfortable feel on the day-to-day. Now, talking about design, that's where I like to go to the front of these phones because you can kind of see their differences in design. Now, you do have a big notch here for the iPhone XR, although it does have a very usable Face ID system in there. And over here for the Google Pixel 4a, you do have a punch hole camera, which can, do some good photos, but no real face unlock abilities on here. You're going to be using this fingerprint sensor on the back. Now, one thing about their design, though, is that the Google Pixel 4a does give you a square camera bump. I mean, that's more similar to the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And over here for the iPhone XR, just that single circle camera looks more like that new SE. So, I think that the Pixel 4a's camera bump kind of looks a little bit more in line with 2020. But at the same time, some people might like that single camera. It looks very clean. As well, you can see the Google logo right there and the iPhone logo right there. Both of these are very clean phones. Let me know which one you prefer down below. Again, if you want the more premium body, that's going to be the XR, but if you want the more comfortable body, that'll be the Google Pixel 4a. Now, it's easy to talk about the differences in display because not only do you get a smaller display on the Google Pixel 4a, but you do get a better display. This is OLED quality here. It's not a better size if you want more size though, because again, smaller display. Over here, you do get 6.1 inches of liquid retina marketing, aka an LCD display with 326 ppi. So this display right here, when you're reading the news or whatever, is definitely not as sharp as the Google Pixel 4a's display. So if we go over here on the Google Pixel 4a, you're going to get an absolute crushing 443 ppi, which what I mean by crushing is it's crushing the iPhone XR in that overall density. You will only notice this if you get really close to the display or you're a pixel peeper. You will definitely notice it. The iPhone XR just not quite as sharp. Now also with both their displays, on the Pixel 4a you have to pinch in, on the iPhone XR you also have to pinch in. There is again a more noticeable cutout in that content for the XR when watching video, and I think the video just looks better because it's more saturated on OLED for the Pixel, but you can see a lot less distraction here for your Google Pixel. So definitely, you got to consider, do you want the bigger display, a little bit less quality here, or do you want more quality, a little bit less distraction with the cutout on the Google Pixel 4a when it comes to media consumption. Overall, both of these displays do have good usable brightness. I could see both of them pretty easily in sunlight. I should mention that the XR does give you True Tone. You can't do that for the Pixel 4a, but within the Pixel 4a, if I go to display settings, advanced, I do have things like adaptive brightness, the night light, the dark theme. You have some customizability here. You can also change the colors to different modes like adaptive, natural, saturated. Again, if you dig around in accessibility, you'll find even more display options for the iPhone XR as well. So there's a lot going on with both these displays. Overall, I would probably pick the Pixel 4a though for just the sheer OLED. And moving on to software. So the iPhone did get the latest 13.7 just yesterday. So if we go over here to general software update, you could see we're on the 13.7. It might have been a couple days ago actually. But you know, you're going to get software support even for a couple more years here for the XR, maybe 3 more years, maybe 4. We'll see. A12 CPU in here gives this longevity like you wouldn't believe. So the XR definitely going to give you that nice clean software. Of course, it's going to get iOS 14 in a couple of weeks here, more than likely. So XR super up to date still, nowhere near behind at all when it comes to its overall software. Now the Google Pixel 4a is a similar story, and this is what really makes this phone exceptional, is that you have the ability to just go ahead and get the latest software whenever for this phone versus other Android phones. It's just not going to happen quite as quickly. Now there's some out there that are now offering 3 years of support, but the Pixel 4a really just going to get those quick updates because it's Google's phone. So really do like this about the Google Pixel 4a. Going to get lots of system updates. Going to be one of the first in lines for Android 11 as well. And when it comes to the general software overall, you know, these are actually quite close if you don't start customizing the Pixel and you just kind of leave it the way it is. You know, they're both very just simple software. You have an app drawer here. Of course, you're going to have the app library when iOS 14 comes to the XR officially. So they're going to be even closer then. On the whole, you know, it's just really down to, do you want the Apple experience or do you want the Google experience? Because really these are just both the duopoly of the smartphone game, and you really have no issue with either. You're going to have the best apps in the world on either platform. Now, if you do care a lot more about privacy and security, Google seems to, you know, track a little bit more things, especially if you don't go and mess around with the settings and, you know, tweak it yourself. You'll probably feel like you're just getting personalized ads a lot on this phone. So you might like this if you care a little bit more about privacy in the iPhone XR. Now, one area, at least technically speaking, that the Google Pixel 4a is no match for iPhone XR has got to be performance. Now, in the actual real world, you're not going to notice much of anything in just day-to-day usage between both of these phones because the Pixel 4a is equipped with a fast enough processor for daily usage. But the iPhone XR, when we talk about benchmarks, when we talk about overall performance, it's going to be faster, especially when you start pushing it hard. Video editing, video rendering, you know, playing extensive games on this phone. The XR has the more powerful CPU, but where the XR chokes up is 3 gigabytes of RAM. Pretty annoying considering when that phone came out, it was $800. This one right here, 6 gigs of RAM. Why do I say that's annoying? You might say, well, iOS is so optimized, because even with, you know, that A12, if you have multiple apps open and then you go back to another app, what it will do is it will reload that application, and that's kind of annoying, especially if you're trying to copy and paste something, like you got a security code, you got to go copy and paste it, and then it reloads. It's just kind of annoying. Whereas with the 6 gigs of RAM on the Pixel 4a, even though it's not quite as fast, you're not going to find this phone kind of just reopening applications on this phone. It just holds them a little bit better in the background. So there's some pros of the performance here with the 730G, but if you want the Boss chipset, the XR definitely squashes on the Google Pixel 4a. And battery life, guys. So the iPhone XR, you know, it has a pretty sizable battery. It's around 2,900 milliamps or so. Not quite as large as the Google Pixel 4a's battery life, which is 3,140. This one, to be exact, is 2,942. However, even with the larger battery, the XR is a longer lasting phone. It just gets a couple hours more, I think, on the day-to-day in terms of my usage. Now, the Google Pixel 4a is an easy day phone for, I think, the target customer for this device. But I think if you guys do want to really have a little bit better longevity, a bit better standby time, although the Pixel 4a is pretty darn good in standby, I think that the iPhone XR is the pick for battery life. But again, the Pixel 4a does include a fast charger in the box, and neither of these are really going to give you much of an issue unless you're a super heavy user. So does the 10R win out in biometrics? And the answer to that question is it depends on if you prefer Face ID or if you prefer the fingerprint unlocking abilities of the Pixel 4a. Now, personally, right now with the masks, the Pixel 4a is more convenient, but some people like the convenience of unlocking applications, banking applications, the security of using their face, because no one's really going to match their face, and you're not going to fool it with a picture either. So Face ID, I think if you want the more futuristic feel, you'll like this a little bit more. But again, the convenience of the fingerprint sensor on the back of the Pixel 4a, pretty much in the perfect location for your finger where it rests, is also pretty awesome. And it also works with third-party applications. So biometrics is really down to preference here. Okay guys, so when it comes to the audio quality, so we're really not seeing the ability to get that 120 hertz. You have a speaker down here and up here. Honestly, the Pixel 4a sounds pretty good. It doesn't sound really tinny at all. Now, the iPhone XR is also a pretty good audio performance. It actually sounds a little bit louder than the Google Pixel 4a. Give you guys my full review on this device. You know, really, if you want the better speakers, I think the iPhone XR has those. But again, headphone jack here, and you know, it's not that much worse for the Pixel 4a. Now, when it comes to the cameras, I like this comparison because it's pretty simple. We have a simple camera on the back of the Pixel. You can zoom in digitally, and you have no wide angle here. For video, you can do up to 4K at 30 for the Google Pixel 4a. I would still like to see Google eventually start putting 4K 60 on their phones. That would be pretty nice. Haven't done it yet. Both have portrait modes, and you have night sight mode here. Now for the iPhone XR, you do have a single camera once again. You can zoom in, and you also have good video quality. You can do up to 4K at 60 on this phone. Portrait modes on front and back, square modes, panoramic modes. These are very comparable. Even on the front facing cameras here for both of them, they both are pretty similar. You have a 7 megapixel for this iPhone XR, and then over here for this Google Pixel 4a, you do have an 8 megapixel. Both can do 1080 on the front, but the XR can do 1080 60 on the front. So again, I think if you want better photo quality, the Pixel 4a is where it's at. It does this AI stuff that just really makes it, you know, really amazing. The XR does have smart HDR as well. So if we go over here into the camera settings for the iPhone XR, you can see down here, Smart HDR also does some AI stuff to make the camera quality look even better. But I would say pick the XR if you care more about taking videos. If you care more about taking photos, pick the Google Pixel 4a. You're going to be happier here. Okay, guys, and connectivity. I'm talking phone call quality, LTE performance, 5G. There's no 5G on either of these. The Pixel 4a actually has better connectivity than the XR. The XR, you know, just not the best in the world here when it comes to, you know, mobile performance. Call quality even wasn't. Call quality was fine, but sometimes I just didn't have as much signal on this phone. So in this area, you want the Pixel 4a. It's the better phone here overall. So at the end of the day, you're getting 128 gig storage to start here for the Pixel 4a. It's actually the only storage capacity. You have more colors here for the XR, so that's a better option, but less storage to start at 64 gigs. And if you're looking for this on the most banging deal, it's probably going to be that 64 gig version. At the end of the day, answering my question from the beginning for you guys, does the Google Pixel 4a do enough to take down the XR? And I would say in many areas, yes, if you can live with some of the downsides of the Google Pixel 4a, like no 4K 60, you know, having a little bit of a cheaper body here and a slower chipset than the XR, you might really love this device. But if you want an iPhone on the low, I think this actually does pretty well against the 4a, even though this phone came out a couple years ago now. So XR is still doing very well. So let me know your guys' thoughts on both these phones down below in the comment section of this video. If you find it helpful, entertaining, informing, click the like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Be sure to stay safe, be well, and peace.